Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ask GHAST version 8, the 8th one. We're going to start by picking up from where we left off last. So the last question was, how are you so hot, I think? And I said thank you by Link Bath, which is pretty neat. And then we have Sheep Amu with, what do you think makes a good Fire Emblem story? I think the characters make I don't know, it sounds weird, I guess, but like I think when it comes to like Fire Emblem stories, I like Fire Emblem really hasn't had a lot of like really like amazing stories in my opinion, but I feel like it's more so like I value more like the characters and like how they interact and like how they like react to what's going on in the world. Cause like, for example, I really like FE7's story, and I know Mecha made like a fucking like 21 part fucking series about how bad it was. Okay. But I think I enjoy the story because I enjoy like how Eliwood reacts to like the events that happen around him. I like it how Hector has to kind of react to Eliwood's kind of feelings and how he has to kind of sort his own stuff around, or that kind of thing. Like I really feel like how the characters react, and I've always found that like Fire Emblem was a very like character driven story, where what I mean by that is like I don't really kind of look at like the big picture. I like to focus on like how these characters are reacting to certain situations, because there's so much dialogue in the game. Like there's way more dialogue that happens in Fire Emblem than the actual events that happen in the story, in my opinion. So I think what makes a good Fire Emblem story is if the characters are good. Like, I don't know. I feel like the big bad villain, like I don't really care if it's like a well-written villain or not. Like Nurgle was one of the most like super generic villains ever. But like I don't fault FE7 for having a bad story because Nurgle sucked. I like FE7 because like Eliwood and like Lyn and Hector had like interesting roles to play in the story. I'm super into like FE7's story. Like people like criticize me and they're like, you overvalue, you read way too much into it. And I'm like, man, it's a good ass story. But yeah, that's my answer to that question. If you had Flarebox asks, if you had to pick 5 Fire Emblem characters to live with for the next 2 years, who would you choose? Okay, 5 Fire Emblem. I would definitely pick. First I would pick. I think I would pick Dedue for my first because he's strong as hell. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We could go work out together. He's very clean and proper. Which means like if he was hanging around, I think he would like volunteer and be happy to clean or like cook or something. I would then pick, I'm going to say Balthus. So my logic behind this is like, if I'm going downtown and I'm like with the boys and like we get into some like hairy situation, I can be like, I have Dedue and Balthus here, and then I could like you would be set for life. If your posse consisted of Balthus and Dedue, I guess Raphael counts, but I feel like I have enough like with those two, then it'd be great. I mean, I think Balthus would probably like kind of like slack on rent for the 2 years that we're together. But I think he would be able to get it together. Like me, Balthus, Dedue, Garrick for sure. I would definitely room with Garrick. Holy shit. Me, like Garrick going downtown with like, maybe not Dedue so much because he's kind of like super, he would be like the neutral, like the grounding character of us. And then like me, Balthus, and Garrick would just be like going out and like drinking and shit. That would be super awesome. And who would my 5th be? I would say my 5th would probably be there's a character who I'm gonna think of and it's gonna be a perfect choice. Who would like spend cash and not give a fuck and just like buy drinks and rounds for all of us and like have like a fucking wicked time? I feel like if Balthus had the money, he would. Maybe Hilda? I feel like Hilda might. No, you know what? Maybe Hilda would do that. Hilda would just like have a ball of a time and just like Just spend a bunch of money with all of us and just get hammered. I feel like that might be the play. I feel like Hilda would be that kind of person. Balthus would be the guy who would blow a bunch of cash for all of us and like not realize he doesn't like he would max out his credit card trying to get drunk with all of us. Liffus is too stingy. Everyone else is kind of like super proper and shit. Salem, no. Maybe Homer? Okay. Maybe Gautry. No, Gautry doesn't come from money, does he? Makalov, hell no. Man, I have to figure out who this fifth is going to be for the crew. Oh, Pern. Oh, Pern definitely would. Pern would for sure be that guy. Oh man, for sure. Pern would be that dude for real. He's leader of a gang, a natural born leader. He probably is floating in cash. Yeah. Oh my god. Dude, yeah, for sure. I feel like Pern would for sure be that fifth guy who would just like, if it's not Balthus, it's going to be Pern. But I think Hilda would be a better pick. I think Hilda might be the fifth. I think my 5 roommates would be, although I don't know if like okay, so it's going to be me. Wait, was the question 5 or 4 plus me? The question is, if you had to pick 5 characters. Okay, so I'm going to go with Dedue to keep our shit together, Balthus for the fun, and Garrick for like also the fun and like that kind of thing. So if I'm going downtown, literally if Dedue wants to go downtown, it's me, Dedue, Balthus, Garrick, Hilda, because she'd be hilarious. And then like, I think I'm going to go with Pern. I think Pern's going to be my 5th. That's my all-star lineup of guys I'd want to get, of like people I'd want to live with in Fire Emblem. That would be like so much fun, so much like stuff going down, but like also, man, it would just be super fun. Like that would be like my place. Pern probably has like crazy connections for like the most messed up parties and stuff. That'd be awesome. That would be like my thing. And then Prio, go. Out of the 4 roots of 3 houses, who do you believe is truly just? Which do you believe results in the best overall ending? The game depicts whoever you side with as the hero, but there must be a defining quality separating them. I think the best overall ending is Claude, because it kind of feels the most complete, because they actually take care of those who slither in the dark. But I guess the defining quality separating them is that like Edelgard has the most kind of like radical ambition, and I feel like her ending or her kind of mission and the way it ends really does the most for like Fodlan in the grand scheme of things, as far as like radical change goes. Dimitri's is, I think, the best as far as like an individual kind of character story, and I think that was the point. But it feels incomplete because of what happens at the end, and I think if they just took Verdant Wind's ending and just like easily just copied and pasted and then edited some things around for Blue Lions, it would work. And then Golden Deers, I feel like Claude was just kind of answering the call because he didn't have a choice, but he had to. And like the war kind of seemed like a stepping stone to his ultimate desire, which is really great. But probably if you had to measure all 3 by like which ones are going to be the most like super changing for Fodlan's problems, I think Edelgard kind of wins out on that. And then followed by Claude, and then followed by Dimitri, really. But yeah. The whole like, yeah, I think that's how I would answer that question. But I haven't beaten Silver Snow, but I do know where it goes. So maybe once I beat that, maybe it's more helpful. But yeah, Kongu, I heard you played Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. Have you ever thought about playing the original Tactics? No, I haven't. It has great gameplay and storytelling, especially in the remake, The War of Lions. I think you would really like it. It's my favorite game of all time, and that's coming from me. Yeah, I don't have any plans to play it, but I'm sure, like, I really like Advance, even though the judge system was dumb as hell. If Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude could support each other, what would you imagine the conversations are going to be like? If Edelgard supported with Dimitri, I feel like they would go over their past and then they would maybe reconnect. And then like if they were okay, assuming there's a golden route, because that's the only instance where this could kind of make sense, except like with Edelgard and Dimitri, and they kind of unite against the common threat of those who slipped in the dark, and they somehow are in agreement about how the Empire shouldn't be like destroying the entire world. I say that very loosely. I don't really mean it literally. I think Edelgard and Dimitri would talk about their past, and then Edelgard would kind of remember everything, and then Dimitri and her would kind of like rekindle their friendship if they see eye to eye, if they're supporting in the first place. And then if Edelgard and Claude supported, I feel like Claude would kind of like see very eye to eye with Edelgard as far as kind of like how to handle like the Empire or the Alliance or something. And they kind of like, instead of butting heads, they kind of challenge each other, but they ultimately are like supportive of each other because like they kind of want the same thing. Edelgard or Dimitri and Claude, I think would be nice. I think it could work realistically if we're fighting against the Empire. The Alliance already does in Azure Moon. They already kind of are friends, especially in like chapter 19 or whatever. So I feel like if they did support, it would just kind of be about maybe like Dimitri maybe letting loose a little bit. It would kind of be like an extension of the Sylvain support, where Dimitri sort of learns how to kind of more relax, that kind of thing. And then like Claude and him just become really close friends by Dimitri just kind of like not really like lowering his barriers, but kind of learning to become more kind of like fun and like less insecure or less kind of like awkward and that kind of thing. With Claude, it honestly would strike me a lot if it was similar to Crom and Gaius' support in Awakening. That's how I envision like their support being. Evan Hicks, what do you think about Tokyo Mirage Sessions? Sharp FE. I don't think about it because I never played it. Ben Mazzara, which modern FE Lord is your favorite one Awakening to Three Houses? I would say Dimitri. Oh, Kappa asks, what is your favorite game mechanics from a previous game that you would like to see return? Can be a system we have. Fate's capturing. I think like the enjoyment of capturing a boss and like using that boss, or like memeing out with like a generic enemy, or like capturing the rally man. Like those are some like legendary moments. I would love for Fate's capturing to come back. That'd be sick. Generally speaking, the Fearge asks, generally speaking, what kind of qualities do you think makes an interesting and compelling character? Just like signs of growth, really. Like I feel like characters really boring if they don't like try to move from point A to point B ever. But in saying that, I think it's also interesting to have a character who's kind of wiser beyond their years, or kind of like in that foil position where they are just kind of like helping other characters learn more about themselves. I think the most kind of boring version of that character is like, or the most boring characters in my opinion are ones that are kind of like really defined by like their trope or their like personality trait and don't really extend past that. So like a big offender of this in my opinion is like Lowen from FE7, who like who mainly talks about being an insecure knight or like cooking a lot, which is like basically his entire character. Because there's like nothing really to kind of like extrapolate from that character. It's just like, oh, he's Lowen, he likes to cook a lot, the end. You know. And it's not even like really that charming of a trait either. It's not like Sane, who's like, yeah, his like one of his most like his pretty much only trait is that he's a womanizer basically. But he's also like really like loyal of a friend to Kent, and like he passes up pursuing Lynn because Kent really likes her or something like that, which is really really cool. But like at least Sane is charming and memorable. Lowen is like doesn't really have any charming traits and only kind of just does two things throughout all of his supports. And really doesn't really have that much of an impact towards the story, but that's kind of a side point. I'm not much for condolences. Which dark magic spell is your favorite / the coolest? I think the coolest looking dark magic spell is Gespenst from FE7. That was so cool. Or like Apocalypse from FE6, which is just like so over the top dark magic. But I think my favorite is probably Luna or Nosferatu. Like, it's not really anything special. Danny Smith asks, Your favorite book and why? So when I was in university, I started reading this book, and it was called Justice Deferred, and it was made by a guy named Len Williams. Yeah, and I don't really remember it because I literally read it probably 8 years ago. But I really, really, really liked it. It was a really good book, and one of the only books I ever kind of read full through and couldn't stop reading. I just really liked that book for sure. Favorite song in Fire Emblem? Oh, Jesus. I think to really quickly answer the question, I would say one of my favorites is the opening from the Echoes game. Man, when you open, it's just such a nice track. It's so settling and that kind of thing. That's the one that comes to my head the quickest is that one. Michael on Ice asks, how do you feel about Ingrid's issue with Dusker and overcoming her prejudices as compared to, say, Soren overcoming his dislike of Laguz? I don't know. I really don't. I haven't really looked into Soren that much. But I like how Ingrid owns up to her prejudices really quickly and realizes that she's wrong about Dusker, and she kind of learns a lot from it. She's only 18 or whatever. But Soren comes from a really different background. And without getting into spoiler territory, I don't really know what the comparison would be like because I haven't even beaten Radiant Dawn, and I barely remember playing FE9. So, yeah. Dayala Singh, I threw up 10 times last night. That's sad. Anyway, who would you say are your 3 favorite Fe Lords are? Not necessarily in any order. Dimitri, Hector, and then the third would be tied with Celica, Eliwood, and Leaf. I think Leaf would probably kind of be bounced to 5th. So maybe between Celica and Eliwood. I'm not sure which one would be my favorite. Tim Jim, perhaps a weird question, but how do you cope with having unpopular takes within the community? I know, for instance, you're not the biggest fan of Ike. I've found not liking Three Houses has caused some Fe fans to not want to discuss anything with me, and has even accused me of trying to be contradictory and hating what's popular. I know it's best to ignore it, but I really wanted to fit it into this fans' fate, yet I feel like I can't find any of my footing anywhere. I don't know, as long as you kind of genuinely, maybe if you've heard the counter argument or you've spoken to people who do enjoy Ike. I've spoken, when I was in my disliking Ike phase or disliking Path of Radiance Ike phase, I was literally talking to people on Discord, explain to me why your favorite character is Ike, and I'll explain to me why I don't like it. And I would get into with an open mind for sure, because I remember I was speaking to one person, who ended up, I think, helping me with my Zhark script, and I was just man, I really don't like Ike that much, but I'm willing to hear your opinion on it. And basically, I think if you have my kind of way to handle this was, yes, having a negative popular opinion or whatever does kind of bring some hating on what's popular or some kind of contrarian kind of take or whatever, and people will kind of fault you for that. But if you've put the effort into listening to the other side, which goes the same both ways, and you still kind of feel that way, and you've come in with an open mind, just say why that is, I don't really the thing with me is that I don't really look, or I don't really value, and this might seem kind of arrogant, but I don't really value other people's opinions of my takes or my opinions if they aren't people who I actually care about or trust. I have a group of people who help me with my support science or my character writing scripts, and their opinion is what I value. Or if I'm talking about Ike or if I'm talking about anyone who maybe isn't part of that small group, then I look and try to find those people to be hey, let's talk about this character. Then I value their opinion. But if I'm making a take I don't like Ike because he's boring or whatever, or if I'm making a take Xander has two literally I feel like Xander is kind of one person in supports and one person in the story. I don't really give a shit if someone's going to write a 5,000 word essay on how I'm wrong. It doesn't really, I don't really care. At the end of the day, I have other things better to do than sit down and read a 5,000 word reply to whatever, or that, to my takes. You know what I mean? It's I really only care about the opinions of my editors. I've like literally throughout my entire time writing, my entire YouTube, I've pretty much only valued those opinions because they're the most like impactful to me. They're the most significant. So if you need questions on how to cope, just like don't care what they have to say. Like who cares? At the end of the day, we're talking about fictional characters, and like they don't have any bearing on the real world at all. Like it really doesn't matter. Like what like at the end of the day, like you're gonna go home and you're gonna sleep and you're gonna be like, damn, I really got ripped up by that guy who really didn't like my opinion on a Fire Emblem character when I'm not doing anything wrong or anything like that. Like it's really common to get really fired up by your opinions and like when people are like arguing with you and stuff. But at the end of the day, like who cares? Like honestly, like it's we're talking about fictional characters, man. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Like, you know, that's kind of my take on it. And the last question by Osvaldo Alcala is, will you ever make an OnlyFans? And to that I say, probably not. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for these questions. Thanks so much for putting your questions in. Hope you guys enjoyed this Ask GHAST. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Deuces.